It all started on a quiet Friday evening. I had just returned home after a long day at work, expecting the usual chaos of family life. Our daughter doing homework, my wife preparing dinner, and the sound of laughter filling the air. But instead, I found the house eerily silent. Something felt off, though I couldn't quite put my finger on it. As I walked through the house, I noticed my wife, Karen, sitting in the living room with her phone pressed tightly to her ear. Her tone was hushed, but her words carried a strange mix of excitement and secrecy. My gut told me something was wrong, but I chose to ignore it. After all, we'd been married for 12 years, and despite a few rough patches, I believed we had a solid relationship. But doubts began to creep into my mind over the next few days. Karen's behavior became increasingly suspicious. Late-night phone calls, unexplained outings, and a sudden lack of affection toward me. So one evening I decided to trust my instincts and set up a hidden recorder in our bedroom. I hated the thought of spying on her, but I couldn't live with the uncertainty any longer. After a few days, I retrieved the recorder and listened to the conversation. My heart sank as Karen's voice filled the room, speaking to someone I soon realized was her lover, Jack. Her words were like daggers to my chest. "Jack, you won't believe how easy this is. My spineless husband handles all the household chores, cooks, cleans, and even deposits all his earnings into our joint account. He doesn't even question me. Meanwhile, I've been hiding away all my income in a separate account. If we ever get divorced, he won't find a single dime. He's such a fool." Hearing her mock my efforts and devotion made my blood boil. This was the woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with, and she had reduced me to nothing more than a pawn in her selfish game. Furious, I clenched the recorder in my hands, my mind racing. How long had this been going on? How could she betray me so completely? And worst of all, how could I have been so blind? But amidst the anger and heartbreak, a dark determination took root. I wasn't going to let Karen and her lover get away with this. I decided to set up my revenge. This wasn't going to be just about confronting her. It was going to be about exposing the truth and ensuring she faced the full consequences of her actions. As I dug deeper into Karen's betrayal, I realized this wasn't some fleeting mistake. It was a calculated, long-term affair. Listening to more recordings and tracking down subtle clues from the past few months, the pieces started to fall into place. Karen and Jack had been sneaking around for over a year. It began innocently enough, or so she probably convinced herself, when Jack, an old college friend of hers, re-entered her life. He was recently divorced, and Karen had bumped into him during a chance meeting at a mutual friend's party. That encounter sparked something that spiraled into the mess I was now untangling. Through their phone conversations and messages, it became painfully clear that their relationship had gone far beyond emotional betrayal. They had met in hotel rooms, during her supposed girls' nights out, and even in the homes of mutual friends who were in on their secret. The most gut-wrenching detail was discovering that while I had been breaking my back to give her a comfortable life, she had been sleeping with Jack right under my nose, at least a dozen times. Karen had even discussed their affair with Jack in disturbingly casual terms, treating it as if it were an escape from the mundanity of marriage. "I'm just so tired of his predictable, boring routine," she said in one recording. "Jack, you make me feel alive in a way he never could. With you, I can forget about being a wife and mother for a while and just focus on myself. And let's be honest, he's too busy being the perfect little husband to even notice what's happening." Hearing those words, I realized how deeply she had disrespected not only me, but also the family we had built together. Jack wasn't an innocent bystander either. He reveled in their affair, often mocking me alongside Karen. "Your husband is clueless," he said in one recording, laughing. "He's like a golden goose. Keep him around long enough to get what you need, and then let him go." Their arrogance was infuriating. They genuinely believed they could keep this up forever without consequences. But what hurt even more was their utter disregard for our daughter. They had put their selfish desires above her well-being, sneaking around while pretending to be the perfect parents. The most damning moment came when I discovered that Karen had brought Jack into our home. It was one thing to cheat on me, but to desecrate the very place where we had built our life together, that was unforgivable. Through all this, my fury grew into something unstoppable. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted to make sure neither Karen nor Jack could ever recover from what they had done to me. Every betrayal deserves consequences, and I was determined to ensure Karen and Jack faced theirs. But this wasn't going to be some impulsive act of rage. I wanted to dismantle their lives in a way they wouldn't see coming. I needed to be patient, calculated, and, most importantly, merciless. The first step was gathering undeniable evidence. The recordings I had were just the tip of the iceberg. Over the next few weeks, I started playing the role of the oblivious, doting husband, making sure Karen didn't suspect a thing. She'd kiss me goodbye every morning, probably thinking I was none the wiser about her affair. Little did she know, I was working tirelessly behind the scenes to gather every shred of proof I needed to destroy her. I started by discreetly monitoring our joint account. Karen had always been in charge of finances, and I trusted her blindly, something I now regretted deeply. But with the help of a financial advisor, I began uncovering irregularities. Karen had been funneling small amounts of money into a private account for months, possibly years. It wasn't just an affair she was funding. It was a getaway plan. Her safety net for the day she decided to leave me. What she didn't know was that I had started siphoning my own earnings into a separate account she couldn't access. The money I had been depositing into our joint account, that was about to stop. I left just enough to cover household expenses, ensuring she wouldn't notice the missing funds. At least not yet. The real suspense began when I decided to take things one step further. One evening, while Karen was out running errands, I installed a GPS tracker on her car. If she was going to keep sneaking around with Jack, I wanted to know every detail: where they went, how long they stayed, and who else might be involved in their little charade. It didn't take long for the tracker to bear fruit. A few days later, she told me she was meeting a friend for coffee. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, and watched her drive off. Minutes later, I opened the tracker app and saw her heading straight to a secluded motel on the outskirts of town. The next day, I decided to visit the motel myself. I wasn't there to confront them, yet. Instead, I bribed one of the staff members to provide me with their reservation records and security footage. It turned out Karen and Jack had been regular guests, booking the same room under fake names. The footage was damning. Them entering the room together, laughing, kissing, and behaving like a couple without a care in the world. I now had everything I needed: financial proof of her deception, recordings of her boasting about her affair, GPS logs of her secret meetups, and undeniable video evidence. But instead of confronting her immediately, I decided to wait. I wanted her to think she was in control, blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to hit. At this point, even our daughter, Emma, started noticing Karen's absences and strange behavior. One night, she innocently asked me, "Dad, why does Mom spend so much time away from home?" My heart broke as I reassured her, knowing the truth would devastate her. But I also knew Emma would soon play an unwitting role in exposing Karen's betrayal. Karen's charade unraveled faster than even I expected. One fateful evening, Emma was supposed to be at a friend's house for a sleepover, which Karen had encouraged. She mentioned she'd use the evening to catch up on some work and acted unusually sweet before leaving, even making my favorite dinner. It was all part of her facade, and I played along. Little did she know, Emma had called me earlier, saying she didn't feel like staying at her friend's house and wanted to come back home. I told her to come straight back and not mention it to her mom. I had a feeling tonight was the night everything would come crashing down. Emma's return and the discovery. Emma arrived around 9:30 p.m., just as I was watching TV in the living room. We were chatting casually when we heard something strange, a faint giggle coming from upstairs. Emma froze, looking at me with confusion. "Dad, is someone here?" she asked. My stomach tightened. I knew exactly who it was. I told her to stay downstairs and walked upstairs quietly, motioning for her to follow me only after I'd ensured it was safe. As we reached the master bedroom, the sound of muffled laughter turned into something far worse. Karen and Jack were completely oblivious, caught up in their own world. Emma stood behind me, peeking around the corner, just in time to see her mother in the middle of the act with Jack. Her gasp was loud enough to freeze Karen and Jack in place. The room fell into dead silence. Karen's face turned pale as she scrambled to cover herself, and Jack looked like he wanted to vanish into thin air. Karen stuttered, "Emma, this isn't what it looks like." But the damage was already done. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked at her mother, with a mixture of anger and disgust. "Mom, how could you?" she screamed before running down the stairs. Karen turned to me, her panic evident. "I can explain," she pleaded. I stayed calm, though my fury was bubbling under the surface. "Explain what, Karen? That you've been sneaking around with this lowlife for over a year? That you've been using me while hiding your income to prepare for a divorce? Or that you just traumatized our daughter by letting her see this filth?" Jack tried to interject, but I cut him off. "You have 5 seconds to get out of my house before I call the police for trespassing. Move." He hesitated for a moment, but quickly grabbed his clothes and bolted. Downstairs, I found Emma crying on the couch. She looked up at me, her voice shaking. "How long has this been going on, Dad? Did you know?" I sat beside her and gently explained that I had recently discovered everything but wanted to protect her until I had enough proof to deal with it. She hugged me tightly, her tears soaking my shirt. "I can't believe she would do this to us," she whispered. "To you." I reassured her that no matter what happened, I would always be there for her. But inside, I was seething. Karen hadn't just betrayed me, she had betrayed our family, and now our daughter had witnessed the fallout firsthand. This was the tipping point. Karen's actions had crossed every line imaginable, and I was done playing nice. It was time to unleash the revenge I had been meticulously planning. She thought she could manipulate me, that I was too spineless to fight back. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing with all the pieces of my plan now fully coming together. Karen thought she had the upper hand, but she had underestimated me. Over the past few weeks, I had quietly gathered evidence. Her financial records, secret messages, and now, thanks to her own arrogance, recordings of her boasting about her betrayal. I had everything I needed to destroy her life piece by piece. The next morning, I acted as though nothing had happened. Karen was walking on eggshells, clearly nervous after the previous night. Emma refused to speak to her, leaving an awkward silence in the house. I pretended to head out for errands but went straight to the bank. You see, Karen had hidden her income, stashing it in a secret account to keep it from me during an eventual divorce. But what she didn't know was that I had already tracked down that account. Using the recording where she admitted to hiding money, I filed for an immediate freeze on the account, claiming financial fraud and concealment in our marriage. By the end of the day, Karen's secret stash was locked tight. She had no idea what hit her until she tried to use her credit card that evening and was declined. With the financial angle taken care of, I moved on to the legal side. I had already spoken to a top divorce attorney and shared all the evidence I had gathered. My lawyer was thrilled. Karen's admissions about her affair and her fraudulent financial actions were a goldmine. That same week, I filed for divorce, citing infidelity and financial misconduct. But I didn't stop there. Using the recordings and financial records, I also filed a lawsuit for paternity fraud. The goal was simple: prove that Emma was my biological child while putting Karen's credibility on trial. Karen's reaction when she was served the papers was priceless. She exploded into a fit of rage, accusing me of being vindictive. I calmly told her, "I'm just doing what you taught me, looking out for myself. Isn't that what you've been doing all along?" The final step in my revenge was perhaps the most satisfying. Karen had carefully curated an image of being a perfect wife among her social circle and family. She loved the praise and admiration that came with it. So I decided to shatter that illusion. I sent copies of the audio recordings and screenshots of her messages to her parents and closest friends. I didn't add any commentary. I let her own words speak for themselves. The fallout was immediate. Her parents called me in shock, apologizing profusely for their daughter's actions. Her friends, who once idolized her, began distancing themselves. Karen's carefully constructed facade crumbled in an instant. Karen was left in shambles. With her finances frozen, her reputation destroyed, and a lawsuit looming over her head, she had nowhere to turn. Jack, her so-called lover, had ghosted her the moment things got messy. He was clearly just as spineless as she claimed I was. Emma chose to stay with me during the divorce proceedings, refusing to even look at her mother. She told me one night, "Dad, you deserve so much better than her. I'm so sorry you had to go through this." Her words meant the world to me. and reminded me why I had fought so hard to expose the truth. The day of the court hearing was the final nail in Karen's coffin. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge not only granted me full custody of Emma, but also ruled in my favor for the paternity fraud lawsuit. Karen was ordered to pay me a substantial settlement for the emotional and financial damages she had caused. Her face when the ruling was announced, it was a mixture of disbelief and utter defeat. She had gambled everything and lost. After the dust settled, Emma and I moved to a new house in a different city. We left behind the painful memories and started fresh. Karen occasionally tried to contact Emma, but my daughter made it clear she wanted nothing to do with her. As for Karen, she was left with nothing. No money, no reputation, and no family support. Her betrayal had cost her everything, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice in knowing she had to live with the consequences of her actions. My journey wasn't easy, but it taught me an important lesson. Betrayal doesn't have to define you. I chose to fight back, to reclaim my life, and protect my daughter. In the end, Karen's lies only strengthened the bond between Emma and me. Sometimes, the best revenge is simply moving forward. Betrayal, no matter how painful, offers a chance to discover your strength and self-worth. This story teaches us the importance of standing up for ourselves in the face of deceit. Karen's lies and selfishness ultimately led to her downfall, while the protagonist's calm yet calculated approach ensured justice was served. It's a reminder that trust is fragile, and dishonesty can destroy not just relationships, but also reputations and futures. Revenge doesn't always have to be about vengeance. It can be about reclaiming your dignity and protecting those who truly matter, like Emma. The ultimate takeaway? Betrayal may break you temporarily, but how you respond defines your resilience and character.